It came together as a response to the architectural space, actually, to start with, because it was such a strong piece of design in the window that the work, anything that was going to go near it, had to actually acknowledge that, but also work with it and take advantage of the light. So the key element was a tall, elegant cross, which didn't hide the window, but which had the red glass in behind to actually capture the natural light and project that into the room, and to show that the cross was a living entity. It's not a dead entity, it's a living entity. The main thing was then, the really expressive part was the figure. So I was trying to get the figure to humanise the design, and hopefully that's worked. Everyone in the hospital will be the judge of that. As someone said before, when they looked, I said, "Look, it looks good." I said, "Thank you, but it's not mine anymore. It's yours." The figure needs to be dressed in some way that allows you to give it a sense of place. And I actually use one side of the figure to take on the abstract. And this is symbolising the spirit, and the carved section is symbolising the flesh, which is exactly what, from a Catholic background, you're actually acknowledging and exploring in your own life, is how do these two worlds meet and how do they work together. And it's very difficult to know how to do that well. We're always trying, always failing. And so, but this is an acknowledgement of that duality, fundamental duality. And because of the sorts of work that this hospital's doing, I felt that was very pertinent, because the people here are struggling with that duality of being able to live in the world and live in an internal life in your own head, your own space, and how there's friction between those two. And we all experience that, but sometimes for those people the friction just overwhelms them. And I wanted to try and acknowledge and be sympathetic to that, but not judgmental, of course, but just sympathetic to the fact that that's a legitimate element of a human life. But it also gives me a chance to put the aboriginality, that sense of place that Australia is. It's so ancient, and the first Australians have such a rich culture of depth and breadth that you just can't not start there. But yet my family background is partly Germanic, and my carving's I've been told that it's very Germanic. And so you've got this contemporary world of the carved object now, but also this ancient world of the land and Aboriginal culture. So it's putting those two worlds together. The work and the wave came about because if you look at it from behind, the piece that makes up the top is a solid rectangular section, and it breaks down as it comes to the front into the wave, into the organic. And those two things, that rigid geometry, which is like the rational, and the waveform is like the creative or the free will, the free form thinking of the mind. Those two are somehow combined in the same mind. And for a creative person, that's essential, that you have access to both of those. But you've also got to have a way to have them coexist. On the base of it, it has a piece of art glass by Toucan Glass in Melbourne, which has the symbol of the pomegranate for the St. John of God brothers and the St. John of God sisters. And it is the subtle reminder of the history of this site. And quite often I'm asked in the symbolism of works to actually acknowledge the history and the gratitude that must be given to people who've made all this possible. Now, these pieces, they came together because they wanted to, because people here wanted them to, and I could feel that. So there's all sorts of stories wound into this, but the people who now take charge of it and come down and live with them, they'll then inject a whole other story and other life into these pieces, which I couldn't do. They become something that absorbs all the things that we can be. And actually they take that and they lift, and I go back 5 years after I've seen things and go, did I make that? Because they've become different. And so that's why it's exciting, that's why it's creative. It's not, I'm going to build you a house with 4 walls and a roof that doesn't leak. It's not like that. Well, this site launched that as well because of the Mothers and Children Centre. And it's one of the key symbols for me, one of the key images because of my own family experience. Being married, having 4 children and now having grandchildren. So this was happening after we'd had our first grandchild. So there's a lot of feeling gone into that. Yeah, people here, I can feel them now, what they're going through. So it's quite emotional and just hit me.